Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the 1Mby1M podcast. I'm here today with Clint Chao of Clint, and we will be speaking about the firm and Clint's background. Welcome, Clint, to the show.
Thank you, Samana. I appreciate the opportunity to spend time with you here.
So tell us a bit about yourself as well as the firm. Let's get you introduced to our audience and get to know one another.
Absolutely. So I've been investing in venture capital since 2005 and had an opportunity to be a part of a venture capital firm before starting Moment called Formative Ventures. And then I launched Moment Ventures in 2013 with my new partner, Amar Hanafi, and the two of us have been investing together since then. Before becoming an investor, I was an entrepreneur and had an opportunity to work in a number of technology startups. Most notably, I was involved as an early employee at a company called C-Cube in the 1990s, and it was at C-Cube where we had an opportunity to help commercialize the MPEG video algorithm, if you will, and
I remember that company,
became a very successful company as a result. And many of the learnings that I had from that experience, I try to bring onto the investing side, and that is most of my background is in the sales and marketing execution part of companies, and I've often felt that that's a skill set that helps entrepreneurs at the startup stage, because in many cases, many of them have never gone through, taking a zero revenue company into becoming a potential industry leader in their target space.
Right.
So I try to bring whatever guidance and experience that I can to help them with that.
Okay. And how big is the fund? What do you like to invest in? What's the investing focus?
So Moment Ventures, we are an early stage B2B focused fund. We invest in the earliest stages of company formation. So we typically like to get involved at the first institutional round of a company. So that can be seed. It could be, in some cases, Series A if they raise seed money in perhaps less traditional ways. But we like to keep the spectrum quite wide, because what we're ultimately we're looking for interesting companies that could actually, disrupt many of the industries that they're targeting. And early on, they may raise little amounts of capital, but as they continue to grow, we know that, industry leaders will ultimately need lots of capital. And as a result of that, our entry point is somewhat dependent on the stage of the company is when we first get involved with them.
And what is your comfort zone? Do you like to invest in, companies that already have product market fit, or would you consider investing in companies that are at a concept stage, still looking to develop the product? How early do you go?
We actually can cover both ends of that. I would say the main case is that entrepreneurs are usually able to build some version of their initial product without much capital at all. And so by the time we get involved with them, usually there's something generally working. Having said that, we have also invested in companies at formation stage. In fact, we recently made an investment in a company on the very first day of the company's formation.
All right.
And that usually comes when we know the entrepreneur in a manner that gives us the conviction and excitement in what they're doing.
Okay. So double click for us down into the B2B investments that you make. What sectors of B2B are particularly interesting? Where do you have expertise? What do you like to invest in?
Absolutely. So first of all, when we say B2B, we're essentially looking for companies that sell their product or service to other businesses.
Yes.
And our approach, we've actually created our own investment thesis that we call Reimagine Work. What we're looking for are entrepreneurs that are able to bring the efficiencies of IT into other industries that had not previously been able to perhaps benefit from the efficiencies of IT and enable them to create new categories of services or new capabilities that were previously not achievable. And so what we're looking for are entrepreneurs that have an understanding of specific vertical industry domains and can take IT, bring them in, and create new efficiencies that, all of a sudden can change the way work is done, how work is found, and how work is performed. And as we've seen in the past couple of years, we've seen the onslaught of new categories of connected devices, connected machines, things well beyond computers and phones. We're now starting to see, as you know, cars and drones and robots are all new categories of connected devices. So what we try to do is, obviously everybody knows that these capabilities are now possible. What I think everybody's still questioning is how do you use these new technologies in industry and in enterprises? And what we found is those entrepreneurs that are able to create a full solution incorporating these new types of machines and bring them to particular industries that have an existing problem they're trying to solve. And in many cases, taking these connected devices and actually coupling them with the human beings that are actually working in those industries, something we call the empowered worker, and helping them become more efficient and more capable in getting their work done. And, at the end of the day, what we're looking for are solutions that, if it's correct or if it works, and it is it becomes a high velocity business opportunity in that industry, we'd like to think that the company has an opportunity to run the table on the industry, because again, some of these industries like healthcare or education or oil and gas, these industries for 100+ years have not been able to benefit from the efficiencies of IT, and only until maybe a few years ago could you make the general assumption that most workers or constituents in those industries have a connected device at their side at all times. Mm-hmm. So now that that's the case, what can we do? What kind of services could we create to sort of change the game for these constituents in these industries? And every day I'm amazed at the entrepreneurs that we get to meet, because they have seen firsthand what's going on in their respective industry, and they've now been able to take IT and create something quite clever to bring to the market that could potentially change the game in the industry.
Interesting. So there are two nuggets that I heard in your description there. One is the notion of the vertical, and the second is the notion of the connected device, and the combination of the two is where you are seeking innovation.
Yes, and the derivative effect that is created when you have those kinds of connectivities in the industry. In other words, just let's take a trite example. The ride-sharing industry became largely possible because it leveraged the fact that all of its users had smartphone technology at their side at all times. Yes. So now, if you understand that,
an even more interesting example on the vertical side is, the trends around vertical cloud. Like a company like Viva, for example, is a very vertically, driven venture that has done very well by addressing the workflow issues of the particular vertical, which is pharma and the whole biotech space.
That's right. And the nice thing about what they did was that they targeted a market that was, hungry for this kind of solution, and also big enough that you could build a lasting, high-value company as a result. So, obviously, as VCs, we have to look for and want to look for companies that can build lasting presence in their industry. So it's not enough to just create a business that has the connectivity, but then to actually build a real business on top of that, where all constituents in the market can benefit from it, and you can build a really big, high-value company as a result.
What, Clint, is your geographical focus?
So we largely focus our investments in the U.S. I would say 2/3 of the companies we've invested in thus far are California-based, and 1/3, but I think a growing proportion of our investments are actually originating from outside of California.
Okay.
And then many companies that we get involved with have what I would consider hybrid locations, where they have some physical presence in the Bay Area for, expected reasons of having a business development outpost that could work with other technology companies for recruiting and for being able to raise money and what have you. But also, many of them have a foot in another market where there's an opportunity to leverage the benefits of that area. Again, if we're investing in oil and gas, a technology company in the oil and gas space, for example, it might not make most sense for them to be based in the Bay Area. The one that
a company or something like that.
One company we're involved with called Validere is actually based out of Toronto, and which, as you know, Canada is a oil-rich country, lots of technology going on there, and so we think that's going to be a growing trend. More and more companies.
We see a ton of companies outside of the Bay Area, given what we do in our global nature. And the other day there was a security company from Cape Town, South Africa, was pitching me on at the round table. So it's very encouraging and very heartwarming, actually, to see how much the knowledge of what we used to do as kind of this cottage industry in Silicon Valley is spreading all over the world right now.
Agreed. And I think the one cautionary tale we give to entrepreneurs if they are based in a different market is just to make sure that you can still recruit easily, that talent it can be found in the markets that you're in, and that can be addressed in many cases. Many of these companies are based near universities that have talent eager to stay in town or stay in the area, and in many cases you can actually perhaps corner the market on the talent in your market if you play it right.
Right.
And so we're optimistic about the continuing trend.
And what trends do you see in your deal flow? So if you look back on the last, let's say, 15 months, 2017 and the first quarter of 2018, what stands out? What are you observing and synthesizing?
So as I mentioned before, our overarching thesis is something we call reimagine work. And the way we look for companies reimagining work are primarily in three categories. One, as we touched on before, new capabilities created by new digital connections, new devices, what have you. The second type of company we look for are companies that can create what we call new ways to work. In other words, creating technology such that an entirely new, different type of business model can be made possible to solve a particular problem in an industry. And as an example, we have an investment in a company called Call9 in the healthcare space. The technology-centric company, but what they've done is built a platform that essentially it helps to eliminate 911 calls in nursing homes. And what they did was created a business model that allowed nursing homes to have instantaneous access to ER doctors, basically located around the country, and connected via a telemedicine connection. And they place actually medical personnel in those nursing homes to act as communicators with the patients as well as with the doctors in the cloud, if you will. And the technology, this new plumbing, if you will, based on technology, allows patients to be seen by, qualified ER doctors, within minutes. The whole purpose is to eliminate the need to, take patients to the emergency room when they don't need to be taken to the emergency room. I think I heard 70% of ER calls coming from the nursing homes are false alarms. And many of them are not necessarily physically suited to be transported at a moment's notice just to see a doctor. So what Call9 did, and by the way, the founder of Call9 was an ER doctor, saw an opportunity to create a new type of service. He actually is a great story in that he actually spent 3 months living in a nursing home to see and actually observe the ongoings in the facilities to understand what kind of platform he needed to create to introduce to the market. And now we're finding that patients are able to get great medical care, and doctors can determine with the severity of a quote unquote 911 incident in minutes rather than hours. And in those cases, they're able to prevent ambulance rolls, which saves patients lots of money, saves insurance companies lots of money, and the hospitals are less clogged with people waiting to see doctors. And so what Call9 does is created this brand new platform, never existed before, and they offer it to nursing homes and nursing home patients on a subscription basis so that they can get that kind of care.
Very interesting.
And so this goes back to that original thesis. If Call9 is right, and we think they're getting some really great early traction, then I think this could be fundamentally a new way to get medical attention and medical care for a large, population, if you will. And so we'd like to think that if they're right, they can actually become a long-standing, sustainable, high-value company providing this capability. This kind of thing exists across all these different markets. And so that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the kinds of companies that have an understanding of the nuances of that industry, but then can take technology and say, what, I can solve the problems where, data gets clogged up or things just come to a grinding halt because of, physical encumbrances that have existed in the industry for decades. And then we try to unclog those with this new type of, digital plumbing, and then create a new service on top of it.
Yeah. How big is the fund?
So our first fund is a small fund. It's a $10 million fund, and we launched that officially in 2015. And we launched our second fund. We did a first close on our second fund late last year, and in the midst of raising the rest of that, that's a $50 million fund.
Okay.
And so our initial investment in Fund 1 averaged around $250K on our initial investment, and we reserve about half the fund for follow-ons. And in the new fund, we'll increase that up to upwards of $1 million to $1.25 million on an initial investment with a similar reserve strategy. Okay.
And do you position as a seed fund, pre-seed fund, post-seed fund, pre-series A? So where in the spectrum are you positioning the fund?
We actually like to, call our fund effort early stage, and we sort of deliberately like having that broad definition. I think, these new definitions of pre-seed and micro-seed and post-seed are great, to help entrepreneurs understand stages. But at the end of the day, what we're looking to get involved with are companies that, are obviously building something groundbreaking, that they need to be able to raise enough capital to prove out the technology, and then prove out that the market is going to embrace that technology. And those two breakpoints, if you will, are natural places where I think follow-on fundraising opportunities exist. So what we like to do is get in on that first breakpoint of opportunity, where a company has some initial conviction on their strategy, on their technology, and they're in the process of validating that with the customer base that they're targeting.
So you're not necessitating that the company has product market fit or paying customers and all that?
No, we're not necessitating that. I think in many cases, entrepreneurs, I love entrepreneurs, they're able to do a lot with very little. And I think in many cases, these entrepreneurs are able to put something together to demonstrate to target customers the potential or the capabilities of their offering, and they have the opportunity to iterate and and morph their business to, evolve their business to achieve true product market fit. Of course, at some point, they need to, build an efficient selling engine so that they can, create repeatable sales opportunities in the marketplace. And that's really what we're trying to ultimately look for is can they build, a repeatable process to sell their platform to customers in their industry. And, and based on what we're seeing, and again, our fund is still young and early, but based on what we've seen really good signs of really disruption capable companies. And we're excited about that.
Yeah. Great. So I would even say that what you described would, in today's segmentation parlance, probably would qualify as a pre-seed and seed fund is probably my guess. And that's great, because that is the part of the ecosystem where there is really a shortage, and people if everybody looks for companies that have already crossed $1 million annual revenue run rate, it becomes very difficult for entrepreneurs, right? Because it's not so easy. I mean, yes, entrepreneurs can do a lot with very little, and we are big supporters and believers in bootstrapping, and we're constantly coaching our entrepreneurs to bootstrap as much as possible. But you also still, it takes time then to bootstrap, and you have to be very creative and so forth. So having, having funds that are willing to work in that pre-seed stage without necessitating all these things already taken care of is helpful. And I think if in the next phase of the industry's evolution, if we can get a bit more momentum going in that pre-seed, pre-product market fit zone, that would actually help entrepreneurs, I think.
So it's a great point. I think the fact that we have so many different categories that we as an industry have created for ourselves, I think it illustrates the fact that at the end of the day, entrepreneurs are faced with a daunting challenge, right? They have to get their startup on its feet, and then they have to be able to convince investors downstream to be able to believe in the scalability of the business. The point at which a company forms, on day one of a company, all the way to the point where they're actually able to attract that kind of attention and money from the large sandhill VC firms, if you will, it's going to take as long as it needs to take, and it might go through several different phases. I actually think entrepreneurs at this stage are looking for investors that have an understanding of that path and can help them sort of figure their way through that. Yeah. And far too often we see entrepreneurs raising too much money too quickly, or not enough money, too late, and they can make a lot of mistakes because they run out of money.
It's a very tricky equation to balance across all these different dimensions. Yeah.
And
how do you process? Go on.
No, I was going to say it's also tricky when entrepreneurs raise lots of early money from lots of different investors.
It's a very bad idea.
Yes. So one of the things we like to do is we like getting involved with these companies at their early stages, and then become, an influential investor with them, and be able to help them get through that. It would be nice if they could, build a seed round with fewer investors rather than more.
Yeah. And how do you process the current investment climate where capital is moving further and further upstream? How does a seed investor mitigate the Series A gap?
So it's a great question. It's clear that your traditional Series A investors have raised the hurdle, if you will, on what qualifies as a viable investment for that stage.
Today's Series A is a Series B or a Series C from 10 years ago.
Well, again, we try not to get too caught up in the verbiage of what stage it is or what letter it is. But the fact of the matter is these companies are being asked to do more with less. And before you're ready to really scale your business, you need to have, the kind of performance that I think warrants that kind of attention. And that hurdle is going up. So again, because we're focused primarily in B2B, and most of our companies are focused on building a product or service that is sold to other businesses, there's a revenue, metric and implication even on day one, right? I mean, types of customers and the type of revenue that you get, the efficiency of your business, how easy is it to sell, and what do the large influencing customers in your target industry, what are they doing? Are they embracing your technology? One interesting byproduct of what's going on, because we're seeing these companies move into these other industries that have not had traditional, concentration of tech startups, is that when companies actually start striking a nerve in those industries, we start seeing interesting outreach from some of the large incumbents in those industries. And that's usually a good sign that you're sort of onto something, if you will.
Onto something, yeah.
It doesn't mean anything more than that maybe you've gotten their attention, and that could be a double-edged sword. But on that note, I think it's very interesting to see, how entrepreneurs react to those kinds of actions. And we're firm believers that even though IPO windows seem to be opening up for great companies, and we're thrilled with that, but most exits for venture-backed companies are going to come via M&A. But I do believe that the M&A landscape is sort of, the window is opening up to a different, category of potential buyers, these traditional incumbents that, they know technology has, is going to make an impact in their industry, and not exactly sure how that's going to happen. But I think there's a lot of intrigue out there. And so we try to help our entrepreneurs, have a constant gauge on their progress in building their early business, progress in building the kinds of relationships in those new industries, and that can tell you a lot about how the company will, eventually grow and put themselves in position to raise, follow-on rounds of capital. And entrepreneurs need to be capital efficient. They need to be very careful.
This is exactly the question that I was going to ask you. It's a very good segue into my next question, which is we are in 2018, right? Lots of stuff have already been built, and nowadays there aren't so many wide open opportunities for billion-dollar companies, but there are many niche opportunities, and the vertical point that you're making is absolutely on dot, and like there's so many verticals, and then there's so many workflows that can produce interesting companies, but some of these businesses need to be built for small amounts of capital and sold for under $50 million, which is where bulk of the exits happen. Do you have appetite for these types of investments?
So first of all, I wholeheartedly agree that I think companies that are going after these opportunities need to raise small amounts of capital if possible and stay capital efficient while they're proving out their business. And however, I do believe that if they're right, if they are starting to show an inflection in their business, there's really no escaping the fact that they will likely ultimately need to raise, a good bit more money from the market. And so maybe capital efficient up front, but then when you're really trying to scale the business, I think it is wise to consider raising larger amounts of money to continue your execution. But to your point,
maybe not, right? Because some of these are getting acquired early also. So if you can build a company for less than $5 million and get acquired for less than $50 million, or, in that 40 to 50 range, that's not a bad equation.
It's absolutely true. I do believe that entrepreneurs on day one all feel that they're going after billion-dollar opportunities. But the reality is that as they start building their business, maybe the market is slow to embrace their technology. Maybe customers have other alternatives, or maybe the team is unable to execute to their plan. In those cases where it could potentially be difficult climbing as far as getting follow-on fundraising together, and an opportunity emerges where they can exit, before they raise large amounts of money, by all means, I think that's a very viable strategy. not all companies.
Well, I mean, in our work, we place a lot of emphasis on TAM and really trying to get to precise bottom-up TAM analysis. And in doing so, one behavior that I see constantly is ignoring the segmentation aspects. It's like, you can say that, this applies to, everybody and their mother in this segment, but that's not true. Often, solutions are perfect for a sub-segment of the population that you think it applies to, and that's where it finds high-velocity adoption. But if you go outside of that segment, it doesn't have high-velocity, expansion. So I think if that is the case, then you better be aware of that and better be aware of what your real TAM is versus overestimating the TAM.
Sure. I mean, and that's actually most clear in the traditional IT market, right? In IT categories, be it security or application monitoring or any of these industries, a lot of these startups, initially create perhaps, a white space opportunity not currently served by the general market, by the incumbents. And they have the vision to, once be successful, expand their presence by, amassing more IP and developing new technologies to help spread and grow their TAM. But that doesn't always happen. And in crowded markets where, dozens and dozens of companies are seed funded, and everybody's targeting some, niche space with the hopes of growing big, you can't grow more than 1x of the TAM, right? And so if there are 10 companies going after that, something has to give. Right. And now, having said that, in some of the markets that we look at, what's really interesting is some of these companies, they're really actually in greenfield opportunities. I mean, like Call 9, we have a company in the education space called Swing Education that is helping schools find and fulfill substitute teacher opportunities. Which these kinds of things are just not currently being
Well, that's exactly right. The niche workflows, and if you have deep domain knowledge of some sort that drives that kind of deep workflow automation, those are very interesting niche opportunities. I love these kinds of businesses.
Yeah, and if they're right, and if the flywheel starts to turn, we think there's an opportunity for them to potentially significantly grow their TAM, because now you've got a technology platform that helps the operations of that industry. And there's lots of places where I think these kinds of companies can go to extend their reach, growing their TAM. So in some cases, markets are really crowded with lots of different players. In some markets, it's completely greenfield. And I think, in both cases, we advise them to be cautious and conservative upfront with their cash. Only really start getting more aggressive in your spend until, once you actually know and have evidence of good fit in the market and have customers bringing you into, further opportunities, and raise money accordingly. And
yeah, great.
To your point, Sharmana, there are cases where, as they're going through that, there may be an opportunity to exit, before having to raise large amounts of money, which, as you know, creates a different hurdle for them to have to overcome.
Yes.
And, many of these entrepreneurs are in their early to mid-20s. They're probably going to do 5 startups in their career, maybe more. So the first one, maybe that's not the one that ends up, becoming the $1 billion outcome or beyond that. But they learn a ton, and we want to find those entrepreneurs that have that desire and hunger to do that. We actually have an interesting situation in that the very first company we invested in Moment Ventures, the CEO of the company built a nice company and ended up selling it to Akamai about a year and a half ago, and then he actually started a new company and became our first investment out of our second fund. So we have an entrepreneur that's been part of both portfolios of 2 different companies, and we love repeat entrepreneurs. We love when they actually, can learn from their past experiences and create
the market
bigger
is
opportunities.
full of repeat entrepreneurs. At the moment, there is, we are in a mature cycle of technology. So this has been going on now for many years. So there are lots of entrepreneurs in the system. Terrific. Well, Clint, that was an excellent conversation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And audience, thank you for listening today. We look forward to seeing some of you at our weekly mentoring sessions. Bring your projects and we will work on them together. Go to the website 1Mby1M.com, go to free public roundtables, look up the schedule and figure out when you can come or when you would like to come. And I look forward to meeting some of you there. Or if you're in the Bay Area, come hang out with us at the weekly rendezvous that we do at Cafe Boroni in Menlo Park. So that's all for today, and we'll be back with another edition of the 1 Million by 1 Million podcast.